Good day, folks. Happy holidays. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas out there for those of you who celebrate. And now that we are getting toward the completion of 2024, as we all know, Reverb always releases a list of their best-selling pedals of the year. Not only those that released in 2024, but also just overall the best-selling pedals of the year. And so I thought what we might do, since it's just you and I today, that we might go through these lists and see what's remarkable, maybe some trends and some commentary around that, and have some fun looking at some of these pedals. It's always interesting to reflect on these lists from Reverb, because I think before Reverb there really wasn't much information other than anecdotal. If you were a customer, about somebody saying, well, these sell really well, or a dealer telling you that they sold really well, and maybe amongst the dealership crowd they may have some sense as to their best sellers just based on where they generate their profits from. But I'm appreciative to Reverb that they put this out, because I think it's always an interesting thing to review from a customer perspective. I think the caveat that I've named in the past when we've done these sorts of videos is that this is one snapshot of the industry, and it tends to break toward companies that do a lot of business on Reverb. And what I mean by that is, for example, there are companies such as Strymon, which forbid any of their dealers selling on Reverb. And so there will be omissions of major brands from this list by way of the fact that they don't allow their dealerships to sell on Reverb. And so this is just something to be known. And then there are also companies that, make it difficult for people to sell on Reverb. And, there's different reasons for that. I think some of it has to do with trying to maintain what's called MAP pricing, the minimum advertised price, in trying to ensure adherence to that. And so some brands know that on Reverb, with the making an offer thing, that they'll end up selling pedals for under what the kind of suggested MAP, minimum advertised price, might be. And so I think that one way to sort of defend against the likelihood of that to happen, that they try to forbid, third-party sites from selling it, even if it's from a dealer selling on Reverb or eBay, etc. These would all be forbidden. And we're kind of somewhere in the middle of that. I think we discourage people from doing that, because it just, when you see a product on there's so much volume of let's say a new product. It's hard for a customer to decide who to buy from, because let's say if you're looking for a Keeley blues disorder, there could be 50 identical listings with the same product photos, et cetera. Maybe some of them are slightly different, but generally the same product photos. And it's hard to cut through the noise without having some differentiator. And usually that differentiator is price, or maybe some sort of bundling where you see not only the blues disorder, but you see 5 patch cables and a 9-volt power supply and some Dunlop picks or something like that. And so there's always these incentives that dealers attempt to finagle in order to sell the product. And I understand, I'm not blaming them for this, but I just want that to be clear, that this is offering sort of a very and a much more narrow snapshot of the industry than probably the entire industry. If somebody like Sweetwater came out with it, it might be a good cross-section to sort of look at where the two might overlap in the Venn diagram. And I would also admit Sweetwater doesn't carry everybody either. So there are things in there that, I think we can account for, but I think it's still a good jumping off point, and I think certainly worthwhile to review. So I'll just say that to begin. So let's look at best-selling pedals released this year in 2024. And so alongside me, we'll have, it'll be one of these sides, we'll have my phone in a screen record mode, so you'll be able to kind of see the same thing that I'm seeing as I see it. Number one was the IK Media ToneX One. I think that this hit the mark on a lot of things, and I even mentioned this in a previous podcast where I talked about companies that I thought kind of won 2024 as far as like having a really great strategy, coming out with a great product. And I think that they did something really interesting here where they made something super compact, which is always a win for guitar players. I think they came out with something that was super affordable, also a win for guitar players. And I think also, it sounds good. Like you can get some great sounds out of this. And I know that there, were some videos like by Rhett Shull and things like that talked about things that didn't work for him about it. But to IK Multimedia's credit, they reached out to him and they are committed to making their product as good as it can be. And to me, that's really refreshing from a manufacturer standpoint and from a customer standpoint, is that they care about the product. They want to know how to make it better, and they don't just go into a sort of damage control or defensive mode where they try to defend their position and their product. Like, they genuinely want to know what's better. And I think that that's really great. That's really refreshing. So congrats to them, man. Number one, that it makes sense. That lines up for me. Hologram Electronics Chroma console. I think that a lot of these are sold through Reverb to begin with, so I'm sure that helps them. I don't know in terms of volume how many of these sell. I don't know. Maybe it is thousands. I can't speak to that. I wouldn't have guessed that, but this one seems like it's a pretty niche thing. I know a lot of people that are into kind of those more, kind of textural things, really are into their like the hologram electronics or electronics products in general. And they're way cool. I mean, I think Rhett really digs them. I know a great artist here in the Bay Area that I'm friends with. His name is Christian Curia. If you haven't checked out his music, my God, he is voice of an angel. Beautiful R&B voice, guitar chops, kind of in the John Mayer realm, I don't know that he's that big in the U.S., but like in Asia, like in Korea, he's huge. And I think on Spotify he's got like, I don't know, some of his songs have like 80 million plays or something like that, but like nobody knows him here, so you can go and have breakfast and nobody bothers him. But he's young. He's probably like, I don't know, mid-20s, late 20s, I don't know, but he's. Check him out. Christian Curia, amazing. He uses a lot of their stuff and uses them in his albums to kind of get some interesting textures. So that was number 2. Number 3, Earthquaker Devices Dirt Transmitter Fuzz Driver Legacy Reissue. I don't even know what this is, but apparently it's cool. And then 4, the Blumes Low Signal Shredder. So 2 in a row on them. So I guess good on them for having stuff that's real popular on Reverb. I haven't heard of either of these, but I mean, I believe the list, but I've never heard of these. The Keeley Muse driver, Andy Timmons Overdrive. This is a cool pedal. Robert had sent me one of these to check out, and I know that there was some difficulty with this particular product, which I'm glad that it made it to this list, because this is not from Robert. I think this is just from like Reddit and internet buzz, that it was originally released as the Muse driver, and then they had to change it to, I forget what the name is that they had to pivot to. But that's a real pain in the butt from a manufacturer standpoint. They released a pedal, they did all the media for it, the videos, etc., all the product photos, the launches. They go to Sweetwater, they do the presentations, they do the product videos. And then somebody says you can't use that name and probably threatens them with legal action. Again, this is not from Robert. This is just internet chatter. I don't know if this is true. And then they have to reissue basically the same pedal with a new name. And I forget what the pivot name was, but I think it was the Muse driver, like inspiration, and it's a pivot from the blues driver, basically, a couple letters different, but certainly rhymes with blues. And I don't know this to be true, but if it is the band Muse, I think that's BS. Like, they certainly don't own that name. Like, I don't know, are the Greek gods going to strike them down dead for using the name Muse? Like, I don't know. It just seems weird that they would come after him for this. So that was just, it's disappointing if that's true, because I feel like this is not, I don't think that this is any confusion, especially since it has Andy Timmons' name associated with it. It just seems like, I don't know, some like dumb flex that like a band that I bet it's probably not even the band. I bet it's probably like their management's like, well, we got to defend this name. But if that's true, man, I think that's BS, and I'd say shame on Muse if that's true. But I think they had to change the name, and they had to pull all those products or probably rehouse them, and that's hugely expensive. Anytime you're doing rework, it's just like, you know, to give you a sense, like let's say the product, I don't know how much it cost for Robert Keeley. Let's say it cost him $80 to make. If he has to get it back and rehouse it and rebox it and reserialize it, even if it's the same circuit board, like he's making zero money. Like all of his margin is gone, because by the time he gets it shipped back, the labor to move everything over, and labor is the most expensive part of making a pedal, and then having to rebox or reserialize it and then ship it back to the dealer, there's no margin. So on anything that was still out there or that he had to recall, and I don't know, again, the circumstances of this, for that to end up number 5, I mean, I'm glad, because it's a good pedal. It sounds great. I have an old Keeley modded blues driver that I love. It's one of my favorite pedals with a Strat on the 2 and 4 position. I feel like it really works well for that. And this is a great pedal. I'm glad it made number 5. I'm sure somebody in the comments can tell me what it actually is called now. But if you like the blues driver sound or you like Andy Timmons, it sounds great. I love it with the Strat. It's really, really great. The benefit for using it on a pedal board as opposed to the blues driver is just the fit is a little easier because of the top jacks, and I think it's quieter than mine is. Mine's got like the fat mod, like with the little toggle switch on the blues driver. So I think that if I were to put a blues driver on a board, I'd probably use the Keeley, especially if I'm crunched for space, because those top jacks just take up so much less space than the side jacks plus the width of a Boss pedal. That was a long one for 5. Sorry. Let's go to 6. Randy Rhoades, Distortion Plus. I have to admit it. This looked cool. I think Randy Rhoades is amazing. You know, and a little guy but huge tone, and you know that Les Paul Custom probably weighed as much as he did. But I never played this. I like the Distortion Plus, but it looked real cool. You know, it had all the Randy Rhoades sort of appointments. I know they did kind of like a cool little release around it. I don't know. I mean, it's not that I'm seeing a ton of them on pedal boards, but again, I believe the list. Next is the Line 6 Pod Express. I don't know that I'd see a lot of those in my world anyway, but I believe it. JHS Hard Drive. I mean, I think pretty much anything that he comes out with is going to make a list like this. I'm kind of surprised that some of the other devices didn't make it that he released, like the delays and that sort of stuff. I'm trying to think what else he came out with this year. I know he came out with some delays. I know he came out with the Larry Basilio pedal, but that might have been like too recent toward the end of the year to make that list. But all those campaigns are always so well done. It seems like he'd be a pretty easy shoe-in for all this. The MXR Joshua Ambient Echo number 9. I guess that's kind of like their take on a Memory Man. Mark Lettieri was using one in the interview that we did with him, but all right, little microphone mishap there. So back to the Joshua Ambient Echo number 9. Seems like, again, this was on Mark Lettieri's board, kind of, I think, you know, Joshua Tree, U2, Memory Man type thing. I'm not sure whether this is analog or digital. I'm presuming it's digital. But great to see that a delay in that form factor for MXR can still make the top 10. I think it's the first delay pedal on the list. And then number 10 is Strymon. And I'm wondering about, as I wrote earlier, I wonder how that becomes number 10 because of their embargo on, I don't know if used pedals factor in. I know this kind of like undoes the thing that I said earlier. Or if maybe internationally they allow it. I'm not sure, but my understanding, because I get some of their like dealer emails, not because I'm a dealer of Strymon stuff, but because I've been able to like purchase some of their stuff as a dealer when I was building pedal boards more regularly, and I'm still, I guess, on their list. And so I always see in their releases, you know, or the pre-releases that they send to dealers about, you know, what's allowed, what's not allowed. There's always like a reminder about the fact that they don't want you to be listing this stuff on third-party sites. But I don't know, maybe that's changed, or maybe there's some other way that people are getting to it. I'm not sure. Wampler Ego 76 compressor, so kind of his take on the 1176 is on there. He's kind of the king of compressors, I think. Another Earthquaker Devices on there. Time Shadow 2, I have no idea what that is. 13 Germanium Tumnus Deluxe. Wampler's definitely did well this year with those two being on there, kind of just one after the other. Tumnus is just a great Klon pedal. I don't know if the Deluxe is just the fact that it's the germanium diode. I've said this before, and in Klon people, pardon me, come at me on this. I don't think that germanium diode means anything. And if you can make a technical argument, now listen to me carefully, technical argument as to why, I would love to hear it, because I think that it is only attributed to leakage. And even if you put two Klons next to each other, with the special germanium diode, some of them are just going to sound different than the others. There's tolerances, and I think that when people are doing honest appraisals of these sorts of things, the germanium diode I know has been identified as sort of being one of the X factors. I don't think that it matters that much. I think that it is the circuit as a whole is more important than the individual part on this particular thing. But make an argument. Come at me on that one. Next one, 14 Walrus Audio Fundamental Ambient Reverb. I think that those are like kind of their budget line. That makes sense. Reverb's exciting. Everybody likes it. And having an inexpensive pedal is a win for guitar players. It's fairly compact win for guitar players there. 15 Electro-Harmonix Lizard King Bass Octave. I think that was the one that they collaborated with JHS on. I'm fairly certain. I didn't know they did a bass version, but very cool. 16 is the Warm Audio Warm Bender and the Fender Hello Kitty Fuzz. I guess they sold the same amount. That Warm Audio Tone Bender, though, looks cool. It looks like they created like a casting that has like the same shape. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty cool. I think you could even switch between the different like Mark 1, Mark 2 versions. J-Rocket Airchild 66. I have not played one of these. I really want to. Chris Van Tassel, if you're listening, I'd love to check it out. Mark Lettieri used this on his board when we were doing an interview with him, and it's kind of like a Fairchild like studio compressor, but in a pedal format, and they use those cool kind of studio knobs on it, and it looks cool. It sounded great. That's cool. I'm glad that we're seeing some compressors on here. 18 Friedman IRD dual tube preamp. This I think is a really cool idea, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this sort of thing going forward, where Dave Friedman has in essence created a preamp pedal that uses real tubes and then uses like impulse responses for some of the speaker emulations and power amp stuff, but the front end is all tube and it's got an effects loop in it. And I think they did a Keeley one as well, which looks really cool. And these are kind of more in the Marshall category, which is kind of what he's been known for, sort of typecast as. I know that Dave would say that he knows and does more than just that stuff, but that's kind of just become his thing. As I've said, once you play Batman, it's hard to, do any other role. And I think that's what's happened to him, but nonetheless makes great stuff in that category. So that's cool. 19 Warm Audio Ringer Bringer. I don't know what that is. Is that like a ring modulator thing? But Warm Audio seems to be killing it here. They got a lot on this list as far as pedals are concerned. I'm kind of surprised their Klon one isn't on here, but maybe that was already released the previous year. Line 6 Pod Express Bass. I guess it's just the little one. The Keeley Blues Disorder. I mentioned that earlier. That's actually a cool pedal. That's like a blues breaker pedal. He sent me one of those, and I think that they're really cool. I like that. The Origin Effects Cali 76 FET compressor, edged out by the Wampler as a 1176 style. Nonetheless, Origin Effects, I think, is pretty well known for making these 1176 studio style compressor pedals, among other things. I think that's not a surprise. Diamond Vibrato V2. I love the Diamond Vibrato. I'm glad they made it smaller. I haven't played this one, but if it's anything like the original, amazing. MXR M307 Layers. I think is that like a delay or a reverb thing? I think is what it is. 25 Keeley Octosi Transfiguring Fuzz. It's nothing I'd ever use, but it looks incredibly cool. Robert Keeley, again, just cleaning up on this list. 26, the Boss VE22 vocal performer. I don't know if this is really a guitar pedal, more of a vocal pedal, so I'm not really sure why it's on this list, but not my list. 27, Benson Amps Germanium preamp. I see a lot of people that like that. I think that the style and his branding is all really cool. I don't know that. I think that he makes his amps there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Cusack manufactures the pedals. Could be wrong on that. I think Cusack manufactures the pedals. I'm not sure if they do it there, but nonetheless, that doesn't matter. I mean, our products are made by a contract manufacturer. It doesn't mean anything other. It's still his design. But I think that, but Cusack is a very high quality, like, standard. Like, a lot of people use him because he's, one, a really smart engineer, really understands manufacturing. And I don't think that this is the case of Benson, but in other cases for other companies, I think he can take good ideas and make them manufacturable so that they can work to scale. And so I think that that's why a lot of people really love using him as a contract manufacturer, because he understands the industry. He manufactures pedals himself, and I think has a really good grasp on what works in a manufacturing setting. But I know a lot of people love it. Source Audio, Artifact, Lo-Fi Elements. I think that that's kind of more of a recent thing that came out, so it's cool that made the list. It must have done well. Electronic Audio Experiments, Prismatic Wall. I don't know what that is. And then the Hotone Ampero 2 stage. I think that that's kind of like a multi-effects amp thing. I don't know much about the Hotone or Hot One. I'm not sure how you say it, but I'm sure people love it. So those are just the best selling that came out this year. But and then Reverb kind of gives you a little summary, a little takeaway. It says, our rankings begin by comparing the sales of only those pedals that were first released in 2024. And it's quite an exciting list. At the very top, the IK Multimedia ToneX One, which narrowly clinched the #1 spot, with the Hologram Electronics' latest, the Chroma console, coming in as a close second. It's crazy to me that the Chroma consoles, they don't give us the numbers, so we don't really know. But again, this is only relegated to Reverb. This is one outlet, so we don't know. So anyway, let's go to the best overall of 2024. So these are pedals that could have been released anytime, but they're just the best overall. So #1, Keeley Compressor Plus. It is amazing how long these have been relevant. Some form of Keeley compressor, from the 2-knob to now, has been relevant for forever. I feel like when I first started getting into pedals, which would have been like into the boutique thing, probably like around early 2000s. I feel like the Keeley compressor was always in the conversation early on, maybe by 2003, maybe a little later than that. Boy, they've had a great run on that. So amazing. Love it. Second, Boss Blues Driver, BD2. Great pedal. I think it's substantially better with the Keeley mod. The Wazacraft one, I think, has kind of that thing already, but great pedal. The Line 6 HX Stomp, that totally makes sense. Those are ubiquitous. Everybody's got one. A great multi-effects, and can, of course, do the amp thing as well if you need it. The TU3, boy, Boss pedals are just cleaning up here. That makes sense. Everybody's got one of those. The Boss GE7 EQ, also a great one. #6, the Digitech Drop. That's hung in for a long time, and I think really valuable for people that want to alter their tunings or want to use it with an expression pedal, and you can kind of get the faux whammy components, but really useful pedal, I think, especially for touring musicians. That makes sense. Boss DS1. I don't know if that's because it sounds so great or just because you can get them so inexpensively, but those have been around forever. Carbon Copy. I've got a Carbon Copy. I think that they're great. I think that it's actually really close to a DM2. I think that as far as the sound of it, it's really close to a DM2. I think it's fantastic. The IK Media ToneX One. So #1 in this year's releases is #9 overall among every pedal that was sold. Proco Rat 2. That's still a classic. Strymon Iridium. So as far as amp modelers are concerned, the ToneX One was first, Iridium was second, but you could make an argument that the Iridium is kind of more fully loaded. You have everything available to you there as far as the big food groups amp-wise. Number 12, the Strymon BigSky Reverb, not the MX. Okay, so that's interesting. 13, Boss SD Super Overdrive. Great overdrive pedal. Hologram Electronics Chroma console, so that was also very big, even though it was, I don't remember what number, number 2 overall, but 14, or 2 on the year, but 14 overall. 15 is the Tube Screamer. 16, Universal Audio Dream 65. So that's interesting that of all the Universal Audio kind of amp in a box, this is the best selling one. I guess that makes sense because Fenders are kind of considered to be sort of the best clean amp that you would use pedals with, and presumably people that are kind of getting this stuff are doing that. I think that their best launch, and I've said this before, I think their best launch was for the Lion. I think the best marketing campaign that UA did was all the stuff they did around the Lion. It was amazing. I think, again, I've said this before, but if you were on the fence about whether or not you could find a digital recreation of a Marshall, I think that is as close as you're going to get with the technology available today. It was pretty amazing. I thought they did a great job. I thought James Santiago sort of framed it all very well. Their editing team did an amazing job. I think that was very impressive. 17, Hologram Electronics Microcosm. So Hologram has actually done pretty well here, and I wonder if part of what makes it sell so well is that it extends beyond the scope of guitar players. Because I know that people who play like synths and stuff like that really like this as well. And I wonder if that's because I don't feel like I'm seeing these pedals everywhere. I see them like in certain genres. It could just be my own. I'm just in my own bubble, so I just don't see them. But it seems like they have reached far beyond just guitar, which I think is always helpful if there's multiple genres and instruments that can kind of fit a certain product. So I wonder if that's really where they're getting a good amount of the guitar market. They're getting bass players, they're getting synth players, they're getting all kinds of stuff. Keyboard players, and stuff like that would all be into this stuff. So I could get that. That makes it make a little more sense to me. Because it just seems like usually those sort of like niche effects, I always find like, boy, you have to carve out a really specific audience for them. But maybe they're more ubiquitous than I think. 18, Greer Lightspeed, Organic. Maybe they meant, does it say Organic? I have one here. Organic Overdrive. That's a great pedal. I have one right here. I use it all the time. Earthquaker Devices Plumes. Cool. I think that's a good inexpensive overdrive. The Andy Timmons Echo by Keeley. So, man, it looks like Keeley, Hologram, Boss. Keeley, Hologram, Boss really cleaned up. They own a lot of this territory. Key takeaways from Reverb's perspective: among the tried and true classics in this overall pedal list, there are some contenders, including the brand new ToneX One and Chroma console that were this year's breakout releases, and also the Keeley Halo Dual Echo Andy Timmons. So Andy Timmons has got a lot of representation here. Released in 2022 as an instant hit, then whose popularity continues. And then they go on to show some of the best used pedals of 2024. So these were secondhand pedals. Again, this clarifies things then. So maybe my Strymon hot take in the beginning, it's been pretty disarmed now, because my idea was that maybe that they included used pedals, but it looks like that's all separate. So maybe Strymon has changed their view on Reverb. I'm not sure. So here's best selling used pedals. So number 1, HX Stomp. No surprise there. Tied for number 2 is the Boss Blues Driver and the MXR Carbon Copy. Again, no surprise there. 3, Strymon Iridium. No surprise there. 4, Boss TU2. 5, Boss DS1. 6, Strymon BigSky Reverb. 7, Timeline. Lots of Strymon up here. 8, Dunlop Crybaby Wah-Wah. 9, Boss NS2, the noise suppressor, the noise gate. 10, the Tube Screamer. 11, the TC Electronics Ditto. 12, the Boss Super Chorus and CS3. So both those tied for 12. Boss GE7 is 13. 14, DD3. 15, Keeley 4-knob Compressor Plus. 16 TU2, so we got 2 Boss tuners on this list, 17 Boss SD1 overdrive, 18 TR2 tremolo, which is also Boss, 19 Earthquaker devices, Plume small signal shredder. I don't know what that is, but it was also on the best releases of 2024. And then 20 Boss RC1 loop station. Man, there's a lot of Boss. So it looks like if you're on Reverb, there's a lot of buying and selling going on of Boss pedals and Strymon pedals in particular. They seem to be very, very transient in this space of Reverb. And then they give kind of like best-selling pedal brands overall here, which is interesting. So maybe we'll finish out with that and do a little bit of analysis. But before we do, I want to talk about a few sponsors that make the podcast possible. The first of which are our friends over at Neural DSP. And our friends at Neural DSP not only have amazing plugins, which are slowly being migrated over to the Quad Cortex, but they also do an amazing job with their smaller unit that is basically taking sort of the core amplifier elements and capture elements of the Quad Cortex and moving it into a smaller pedal format. And it is called the Nano Cortex. I'm looking over here because I have one. Nano Cortex right here. Amazing device. Absolutely love it. I'm able to load up all of my amps. I think the best way to treat this is though this is your amp. You can have your analog pedals kind of run into the front of it that you need that would ordinarily go in front of your amp, and then you run your wet effects and processing after it. I think that that's the best use case for this if you've not already been hip to this already. But get some amazing sounds, and even some of the stuff that's just preloaded on there. I think their JCM 800 is really a good sound. Whether you're playing clean or kind of dirty-ish, it's a really nice sound. And I love it for workflow purposes. Really great for that. In any case, they have a special discount code for our listeners to get you 30% off any of their plugins of your desire. And I will have that code listed for you on screen right here and in the show notes so that you can get that special discount wherever you would like to use it in terms of their plugins. And if there's anything plugin-wise that is less than 90 days old, you won't be able to redeem this. But as soon as it hits a 90-day mark, then you will be able to redeem this code and get 30% off. Think of it as 70% away from free. Great stuff over there at Neural DSP. Their new Chorus is just another update. They've got some really cool stuff. I saw that they just released a new Rabia plugin, which looks really cool. Not necessarily my style, but he does get great tones, so I'm appreciative of that nonetheless. Also, among our sponsors, I'd like to talk about our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary. Now, this is one of Dallas-Fort Worth area's premier guitar dealerships. And not only do they have guitars, they have pedals, they have amps, they have all the stuff that you might want from boutique to kind of mainstream brands. Absolutely amazing. Check out their website, guitarsanctuary.com, or head over to McKinney, Texas, and you can see them in person, doing their thing, asking them the questions that you have about the gear, whatever it is that you want. They're going to be able to answer that for you. And it used to be the former workplace of the great Brian Omilion before he branched off to go solo. But man, what a great shop! And I think you'll dig it. I think that you'll find that they have a lot of great stuff, and all those kind of niche boutique things you might be interested in. They definitely will have it there. Next, our friends over at Mono Creators. Not only do they make amazing gig bags and pedal boards, they also make a compact power supply, which I don't feel enough people are talking about. It's actually very similar to the Walrus power supply, almost the exact same profile and kind of style of power supply. So I'm kind of surprised people aren't talking about it. It's very, very well built, quiet, low profile, all the things you might want from a power supply. You can probably stash it underneath the majority of pedal boards, or you could use it on top. It has a separate power brick where you get the mains from, just like how it is on some of the Strymon stuff, all the Walrus stuff. Really, really nice. And of course, their cases are best in the industry, gold standard amongst guitar players. So I highly recommend you check them out. Use the coupon code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, and get 10% off anything on the Mono Creators website. We'll have all that listed in the show notes and right here on screen. Also, I want to talk to you about our friends over at BTPA, Besttronics. Now, Brad, one of the guys that runs the place, absolutely amazing, can get you anything that you need, whether you're talking about dual lock, whether you're talking about 2.1 millimeter barrels, whether you're talking about Mogami cable, whatever it is that you need, it is a one-stop shop for all things pedalboard. And if you have any questions about part numbers, about things that you've seen on one of our rigs or a Brian Omilion rig or a Goodwood audio rig, and you want to know what part number it is, I am pretty sure that Brad has committed it to memory and will be able to tell you immediately what it is. So head over to btpa.com, check out what they have. If you have questions, email them, ask for Brad, tell them the chairman sent you, and use the coupon code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, to get 10% off at checkout, 90% away from free. All right, now back to the best-selling brands. It may not be a surprise to some of you, but number one is Boss. Boss is the number one selling brand of the year. No surprise there. I mean, probably the most pervasive pedal brand you see. Everybody's got at least one Boss pedal on their pedal board. I think on this one right here I'm looking at, I have three. I have a Tremolo TR2, I got a VB2, and I have a GE7. The GE7 is XTS modded, and so is the Tremolo, the TR2. And then the VB2 is just an old one. Three of them on there. So everybody's got at least one. 2 Electro Harmonics. 3 MXR. 4 TC Electronic. 5 JHS. So, I mean, as far as like smaller boutique companies, I mean, all of these are like monoliths, because MXR is like Dunlop. Boutique companies, JHS is 5, 6 Strymon, 7 Earthquaker, 8 Keeley, 9 Walrus. All this makes sense to me so far. 10 Digitech, 11 Dunlop, but Dunlop is MXR, so you really, I think you could kind of put those together. 12 Line 6, 13 Ibanez, 14 Wampler, 15 Universal Audio, 16 Catlin Bread, 17 Chase Bliss, 18 Full Tone. That surprises me because they've taken a lot of heat recently, and I don't really feel like I see them around that often. But, best selling, I don't know if they indicate whether that is new or used or just overall. 19 Exotic, 20 DOD. That surprised me too, because I don't really feel like I'm seeing a lot of DOD pedals that are coming out new, but maybe I'm just missing the boat there. So super interesting. I feel like this is a super interesting thing that we're seeing here with all of these brands. And man, I guess there's not too many surprises. There's the only surprise to me. And again, I take full responsibility. This could just be the bubble that I live in. I just don't feel like I see a lot of the hologram stuff that, like, at the level that I see ToneX Ones. And to say that it narrowly beat it out. Now again, Reverb says that this is just according to what's selling there. And Reverb is by no means a small marketplace. I think it's a good representation of a part of the marketplace, for sure. I don't think it represents everything. Again, I think it'd be really interesting if you started to see like a Sweetwater come out with a list like this. So that you had something like to kind of compare against, to kind of see, okay, how representative is this of like a retail store that has a lot of brands as well. I think that would be really interesting. I don't know that Sweetwater will do that, but I do think it's an interesting conversation. I know that they did give Josh Scott some access to this information because I think he released a video a couple of years ago where he basically said that Behringer was their best-selling pedal or best-selling pedal brand. And I think it was like the Fuzz or Distortion or something like that was the number one selling pedal. And I think that was interesting to me, and I think it shows you how big of a motivator price is as it relates to the volume of sales. Like I would think that like the new X pedals or the Hotone or Hot Tone or whatever it's however you pronounce it, I would think like that sort of stuff would sell great because it's just the price for entry is so low that people could just go crazy, or like those pedal companies that make, like an exact almost one-to-one replica of a King of Tone. Like I think something like that would be it would sell like crazy. I don't know, maybe they don't allow it to be sold on Reverb or something like that because it's too close to the original KOT, but I would think stuff like that would sell like crazy, or some of the clone stuff, or the replicas that look just like it, like the Seriatone and stuff like that. Like, I feel like I see those everywhere. But maybe they don't sell that stuff on Reverb, or I don't know the reason. But I'm curious if any of this stuff surprised you. None of it really surprised me, other than the hologram stuff. I think that was the only one that was surprising me. Everything else seemed to make sense, or kind of added up for what I see. You know, I feel like I'm not in the Earthquake or Devices conversation, but I know that they're, you know, I know they sell a lot of pedals. I knew they do a lot of business, so that really makes sense to me that they'd be there. But I don't know, maybe these Chroma consoles and stuff like that. Maybe again that there's so much overlap in other instruments that that they're getting customers that are from all over the place and not just in the guitar world. But yeah, and it makes sense. Yeah, Boss is at the top of the heap, and ironically, like Boss, Electro-Harmonix, MXR, TC Electronics, like the top four, those are all like long-lived legacy companies that have been around forever, you know, since the 70s on all these. So it's kind of interesting that these companies that have been around forever are the ones that are in kind of that top four spot. And then, you know, congrats to JHS, Strymon, you know, Earthquaker, Keeley, Walrus, Digitech for kind of following up, you know, behind those. And it's kind of cool to see some of these more boutique shops that are in that conversation. So that's really cool. But yeah, I think these lists are always fun. I'm sorry that we can't be conversing with Grant and Brian to kind of get their takes on some of this stuff, but they may have their fingers on the pulse of this a little better than I do, because they're building so many rigs and they're getting to kind of see these sorts of pedals kind of come through. But I'm really curious if there's stuff that was surprised you that it wasn't on the list. I'm trying to think if there's any like surprises to me that weren't on that list. Yeah, I don't know. You know what? One that kind of surprised me that wasn't on that list. I feel like I see a lot of jam pedals hanging around. I think that would be interesting to kind of see where those fall. I'm trying to think of what else I see up here that would be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Or like some of the Nano Cortex thing, I actually kind of surprised me, or Quad Cortex, but I wonder if those are sort of embargoed too. Like maybe people can't sell those on Reverb. That kind of surprised me that it's not there. But maybe it's, you know, the price of admission is high, and so they kind of fall outside of this list. I think that one thing that's in common with the majority of these is that they're not super high price points. You know, like most of this stuff is, there are exceptions, of course, like the Strymon stuff, but for the majority of them, they're probably under $300 or under $250. Some of them even lower than that. So yeah, there's definitely something to be said about price motivation on some of this stuff as kind of being one of the factors. But man, just like good branding and having great tones. So congrats to all the people that made the list. Again, tell me what you think in the comments. Hope you guys have a wonderful New Year and had a Merry Christmas, or whatever it is that you celebrate. And we will see you next Monday, hopefully with Brian and Grant reunited after a wonderful Christmas and New Year. And we'll see you next year. Take it easy.